Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories. Welcome back, everybody. Today, I am excited to be here with Rich Lee with Home Pride Construction. They're located in Pacifica, California. You know, Rich has been someone I've been following along for quite a while now. I think we originally met back in 2021, you know, kind of stayed acquaintances for a while. I think maybe later in 2023, 24, he finally joined us here at JobTread. But, you know, really excited to have Rich on. He's got a really interesting story, and, just want to welcome you to Builder Stories, Rich.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Yeah, so why don't you give us the background, you know, how did you get into construction? What is Home Pride? You know, what do you guys do? And, you know, kind of just give us some of that backstory real quick.
Yeah, so I was basically kind of born into construction. So my dad started in construction part-time as a firefighter, and he was hurt on the job and then couldn't get back in as a firefighter, so became a full-time contractor, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. But so he started the company, and it was just him and a partner, and they worked bags on, one job at a time. And as a kid, probably once I was old enough to do any kind of work, he would have myself and my brother and any other kids around just start doing little things here and there. And when I graduated high school, I became a full-time employee. So that was 95. And then kind of worked my way through all the roles from that laborer, apprentice, working my way up, and realized pretty quick I didn't want to be a framer. So I started looking towards different things like smart wiring and doing HVAC, and kind of done all the trades in the business, and ultimately started working on design, which was pretty good. About 2000, I started working with Chief Architect. That was the software we landed on, and we were doing basically design build since then. For a while, we were doing our own projects, building spec and then selling or flipping. And when the market crashed in 2008, I kind of saw the need to change our model a little bit. So I kind of took over the company at that point. And my dad doesn't like multitasking, so I kind of just like, let me take over because we need to scale. So I scaled the hard way, though, just cramming more work in and finding a way to produce it. So that was very stressful. And we've been testing out different things and JobTread, and that's going to help us kind of focus and get some organization rather than everything being trapped in my head, which is how I run most of my work. So that or a notepad. So yeah, JobTread will be good, getting us a little more organized and all the employees knowing kind of where we're headed. And yeah, we're growing pretty steadily. Marketing really hasn't had to be ramped up too hard for us to keep really busy, and we're doing pretty good, looking to keep growing year after year.
That's awesome. So, I mean, truly, you were sounds like literally born into the construction business, like you said. I mean, I'll assume it was in a hospital, not on a job site, but
Funny story is, yeah, so I was probably just not quite born into it, but my younger brother was actually born in a job site. We owned the job site at the time. It was our house that was under construction, but my dad delivered my brother in a construction site.
Wow.
He was born
crazy.
into construction. I was kind of just a little before.
Yeah. Well, sounds like that you've really had kind of a whole different, you know, perspective, being able to grow up, you know, seeing it all, and then working in the trades, kind of, you know, doing all of the actual physical labor and work, and then sort of moving over to more of the, you know, the design, the back office, and then ultimately kind of running the business, which is, you know, it's awesome that you've got all those, you know, all that experience. I find that, you know, employees will very much, you know, often respect a leader who can say that, look, I've been there, I've done that, you know, I've been in your shoes, like I have, you know, done everything that I'm asking you to do. And it sounds like you truly have been there and done that for them.
Yeah, it helps. It gives me insight to talk to the crew, and it also gives me that perspective how the homeowners are feeling, because I mean I've lived in houses under full construction, so I know how it goes when water's coming in the house, or you got scaffolding and mess everywhere. So I can kind of explain what they're in for before we start to kind of prepare them, so that all that information is useful for them and the guys.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about, so, it sounds like, kind of 2007, 2008, market crash, you really came in and took over. I mean, like, was the business on the brink of going under? Was it like, what were the biggest challenges that you felt, and kind of what was the, kind of the catalyst that said, oh man, like, we got to do something different. I need to take the reins here.
Yeah, so we probably were close to the brink because we were working only for ourselves, developing projects at the time. Like, the real estate market was on fire, and we had probably 40, 50 units in development. And when we got kind of the biggest project that we were going to work on was about 35 units. My dad had been focusing like years to get it approved. And right around the time it got approved, that's when construction loans were just shut down. So he had this approved project that needed millions of dollars, and there was just no money to be had. So we were burning cash really quickly, and we had to offload a lot of property. And at that time, we just kind of started letting clients know that we're open to take on work for customers again. And luckily, we had a good reputation and a lot of people who were ready to jump. And we just kind of shifted gears from developing to working with customers again.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what would you say the biggest kind of, things that you did differently? Like, what do you sort of feel like was your dad's mindset, maybe the old school model versus the new school? Kind of where did you come in and really see the big opportunities to kind of, steer the company in a different direction?
Yeah, I would say definitely the biggest difference is my dad would just want to do one job at a time. And I realized that wouldn't support two owners, and it also wouldn't really support a lot of growth. He was looking at it more as a good job, and I was looking at it more as a business. So that was kind of the way we saw things differently. But the fact that we were so different made it a good partnership, because we were basically opposites and even supporting each other where we were weak. And his work ethic was where we both have a pretty strong commitment to putting in the work. So that was what kept us going through those tougher times.
Yep.
And I'm okay managing multiple things at once, and my dad really just wants to do one thing. So it was I could kind of like say, okay, here's a project, take it over, and I'll kind of oversee the bigger picture.
It's funny. It sounds a lot like me and my dad. My dad is our CFO here. He's my CFO in my last company, but I always I grew up, looking up to him. He was always my mentor, my go-to. Any challenges I had, or things I wanted to talk through, I always went to him and could tap into his experience. But we're definitely very different in the perspective that I want to grow. I'm all about let's scale this thing, let's grow big, let's go for the go for the moon here. And he's always very grounded, like, well, we got to do one thing at a time. Let's focus and do this and just do this really well. And I think that's it's interesting that we both kind of have the very hard work ethic, and I certainly got that from him, but kind of two separate sort of directions that we want to go in. And he's definitely much more conservative. I'm going to swing for the fences every time, but it really is. It's awesome being able to work with your dad, and I feel like that really brings me a lot of joy. Just every day I get to come in and know that I'm building something with him, and I think it also sort of helps bring the family culture, if you will. To be able to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I hear people who say they don't see their parents very often at all. I mean, for years I saw my dad almost all day, so that's kind of good. It's a good thing to have.
Yeah. So
have that
what's your team look like today? Like, how do you have that structured?
So right now I'm kind of a blend of employees and subs. I have about 10 in-house employees, and then the rest are subcontractors. I'm getting more and more warmed up to the subcontractor model, but with how many projects we run, I kind of need to have a lot more control. So depending on an outside company to jump when I need them, that's always been my tricky situation. So I only have subs that are willing to basically come when I say I need them. Like last year, I think we had close to 30 in-house employees, and that got a little too much because they were all direct reports to me. And along with managing all the projects, it was just way too much.
So what did those people do though?
My employees, I had like all the skilled trades. So I had plumber specific, electricians, tile guys, carpenters, everything pretty much covered in-house.
Wow, okay. Nice. I mean, typically the mechanical stuff, you definitely see that, outsourced with subs, but you had everything in-house. Did you have any, kind of back office support? I mean, any, the office, the, project manager, sales?
No. So I did all the sales. I did all the project management. I had admin who was with me for about 6 years, and she just recently kind of decided to retire, but she was a good support. And now actually my wife and daughter are trying to pick up some of the office stuff. My daughter's doing some job tread, and then I have a couple VAs that are also working through the certifications with job tread, so they'll be able to help take over some of that office stuff for us.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, so like as you sort of took over in 2008, how did you decide, when to hire these people? I'm going to go ahead and assume it wasn't, day one, but like a lot of people struggle to figure out like when is the right time to bring on another employee. There's a lot of, fear about, well, can I afford them? Like, maybe things are good now, but like in 6 months, like, am I going to be strapped for cash? Like, how did you sort of navigate that? Because to grow all the way up to 30 employees, I mean, that's a huge payroll that you had there. And obviously you've now scaled back down. So kind of tell us a little bit about what that journey has looked like, and how did you know that you needed to ramp up and then obviously offload some of them?
So the scaling up was definitely, there was times where like I didn't cash my check. This was before direct deposit, but yeah, I mean, I would hold my own checks and make sure payroll was met. So there was some tight days in that early transition. We weren't charging enough for one. I think for a while there was just marking it up 20%, 10% profit, 10% overhead, which, wow, we all know now that doesn't even cover the bills. So for a while there, things were tight, and, through various coaching programs, we started learning a little bit better about what our numbers should look like, and just added team members. I think at that time when I took over, we had maybe 4 or 5 guys, including myself. And then we scaled up probably around 10. And I just started growing it incrementally. And for the most part, there was no issue keeping the guys busy. The biggest issues we had is there was a couple of years where it rained. So California is pretty good for droughts, which is great for building. But there was a couple of years where it rained for like 40 days. And that was really, really problematic for us, because I didn't want to have the guys not get their full week.
Yeah.
So I would just, let them be inefficient and still work, and trying to keep them busy so they were always there for us when we needed them.
Sure. So when would you say kind of you hit that peak and realized that you needed to maybe leverage some subcontractors, and kind of what led to the offloading of some of the employees?
Yeah, it was just, so I was hiring out of need and wasn't spending the time up front really vetting them, making sure they were the right personality type or even the right skill level. Is basically just come on board and then figure it out later. And the reason why I started offloading some is I was able to spend a little more time, and I'd see them just not producing. So I started out with the obvious problem guys, cut them, and then kind of weeded down to the guys I felt like I could really depend on.
Sure. Yeah, it's always tough, and a lot of times you see people that, they overhire, bring on too many people too quickly, and, the cash flow just isn't there to support it. And I think that's when people really start to get into hot water, and then, you ultimately do have to go make those tough decisions on, well, who am I not paying this week, or how are we going to make payroll? Do I need to go borrow some money? Like, are we going to go ask for some advances from the customers? And so it does kind of get into that tricky situation. It sounds like though you early on, maybe you had more concerns about, using subcontractors because of the control, scheduling, things like that. I mean, have you sort of had a mind shift and sort of what, how you look at that, or do you still have those challenges? How have you kind of gotten more comfortable with it?
Yeah, I still feel a little bit concerned with that, just because problems and emergencies pop up, and if I don't have someone who can take, like, if there's a leak or something just goes wrong on a job that's really a high level emergency, and even if the sub is great, but what if they're on another job an hour away, and I can't get them in the 30 minutes that I need them? So that's still my concern. I do have a few good subs that I can call and they'll jump pretty quick, but I still need to have, I feel like I need to have those in-house guys that could go tackle the, those real urgent priorities.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have kind of your core team able to go and jump and sort of pivot whenever they need to.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you find, either employees or subcontractors? A lot of people really struggle, especially, today in this environment. Like, how have you found anything that has worked really well for you, or just any kind of sources of these guys?
Yeah, so I've done a few different ways. So I've had some guys who've been with me for quite a long time. So I always let them know if they come across someone who they think would be a good fit, let me know. We've posted on sites like WiseHire and Indeed and gotten a few decent guys through there. And I also, for the subs, I have someone whose job is pretty much just scouring Facebook local groups, combining a bunch of all the information, reaching out to them, doing a little background check on them, getting their certificates of insurance and license, and then putting them into a database that we kind of have a bid sheet. So
that's really interesting. Is that like a VA that's doing that?
No, it could be a VA, but it's actually a physical employee local.
Okay, interesting. And I mean, that sounds like a great way to build up a database of people that you can go to in a pinch, or just if you want to start kind of working them into the schedule, try them out, see how they perform.
Yeah, getting that roster of backups is kind of the key, because if you only have one, you're out of luck if something goes bad.
Yeah. So is it like what types of Facebook groups are they kind of looking through?
So it's kind of all the different contractor groups. So there's the, like, where we live is Pacifica, California. So there's the Pacifica locals, but that would be more unlikely to see. Sometimes contractors might post something in there, but there's more just like ADU builder groups. There's construction groups. I don't personally go and browse through all of them, but that's what my employee does, and it's mostly like builder groups.
Yeah. Okay.
Someone say, hey, I need a roofer, and then they'll see roofers send their business card or whatnot. And she just kind of scours all that info, makes a spreadsheet, and just starts building it out.
Nice. That sounds like a great strategy for sure. I mean, I always preach to people, like, treat your your workers just like your leads. You need to track them, manage kind of all of your outreach. Like, even if they tell you no today, that doesn't mean that they're not a great potential, employee or trade for you. Like, you got to stay on top of it and just make sure you're staying in front of them, and, keep building that relationship, because a great person, they don't come along that often, but, when you can kind of keep in front of them and try to win them and get them to join you at some point, it's a great way to keep building the business.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a good resource to have, because we found a few subs just from that approach, having that employee checking all those local groups and making sure they're licensed and insured is big for us, because I found out the hard way, if you pay people that aren't insured, you end up paying their insurance. So,
oh man,
getting those big workers' comp bills on an audit are not fun.
Yep. Literally, when I took over the construction business in 2018, we right after I started, we got audited by our insurance company, and they said, "Hey, we want to see all your sub COIs from the previous 12 months." I was like, "Okay, yeah, no problem." And go to the admin and, "Hey, can you pull that?" And they're like, "Well, some of them gave us the update. We collected it when they started, but our guys have been with us for a while. Yeah, we might not have all those." And I think we ended up getting fined like $35,000 for, just for not having, the proper insurance for those guys. And, it something that, again, it would have cost us nothing to just stay on top of that, and just make sure that we have their COIs and that they're, getting the proper coverage. And when you don't do that, ultimately it can come back to bite you.
Yeah, I think I had to pay a couple $100,000 in premium for the year we paid a lot of guys that we didn't have their certificate, and they just became employees in the mind of workers' comp.
Oh man, yeah, that's rough. What do you do now to stay on top of that?
Well, that's like I said, we don't hire them. We screen them before they even get to give us a price on the job these days.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because in the past, I'm go, and those little things can slip through the cracks, and your other leverage is if you don't pay them until you get it. But sometimes I'm soft, and I would give them a check, and then all of a sudden they lost their insurance or whatever their excuse would be, and it becomes my problem. So yeah, getting it before you even start is going to be the best way to do it.
Yeah. So earlier you talked about, you were marking up your jobs, 20%. You ultimately figured out that wasn't enough. You said you kind of had to go and really learn your numbers. Tell us more about that, and how did you kind of go through that? Because I find all the time people just, again, they don't understand the difference between markup and margin. They think they're, marking up a job, whatever percentage, and that's going to earn them, that same amount from a gross profit standpoint, which it isn't. So how did you kind of go through this revelation and understand like that you weren't charging enough?
I think the first thing was I went to like kind of a seminar and I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name, but he wrote the book Markup and Margin, I think is what it's called. And he just did the math. He's like, if for 10% profit and 10% overhead isn't 1.2, it'd be like 1.22. So at that point he was saying a good target is 167, and that's kind of 167 markup. So that's where we kind of did it. And slowly over the years we realized like there needed to be some adjustments, and now we're shooting for a 50% gross profit across most categories. There's some times where we'll adjust on a job by job basis.
Sure.
But
so
that's our target.
Yeah. So I mean, you're marking up, even so everyone else, if you mark up, 66, 67%, that's only going to get you a 40% profit margin. So
and that's what he was preaching in the book.
Yeah. So how did you realize though that you needed to, so did you not have kind of an understanding of what your overhead was, and to go from, your gross profit is just on the job, but then I think a lot of people don't understand also their operating cost to ultimately get down to their net. So, was that like an exercise that you just sort of had to go through, and how did you figure out what you really needed?
Various groups. I've had a lot of coaching throughout the years from various contracting coaches, and it all just boils down to really figuring out what your overhead is. For a long time, I didn't know what all went into overhead. At the time when we had two owners, both of our salaries were primarily overhead, and a lot of that stuff just adds up, and we weren't really watching it too close.
Yeah.
My dad's mindset was just bank account operating, and I was like, let's track. So we have been tracking for a long time, but we weren't always checking the numbers after, so kind of seeing how we landed.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a big change too, because you could go in with your estimated gross profit, but what'd you end up actually doing? And then of course the net number is the most important number for the business.
Yeah. And I think when you have employees, that can also be, a challenge in regards to estimating, how many hours do you think is going to go into this job? Kind of what's their impact going to be on the job? But then even just, a lot of people think, I pay this guy $50 an hour. Well, no, you're actually paying him a lot more when you look at all the the taxes and employment benefits and everything that you've got to provide for that person. So I think certainly, to ramp up, all the way up to 30 employees, your overhead would have been, probably larger than most people who, might not bring that many people on. But, obviously it's something that's very important. Cash flow is like, arguably one of the most important, factors for a construction business, and oftentimes can be the thing that, can just come up, out of nowhere and just bite you really hard, or, even put you under, looking at your bank and saying, I got, a couple $100,000 in the bank. Well, that doesn't mean that that's your $100,000. You might have even more, in liabilities that you got to pay out the next day or next week or month or whatever. So yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah. I realized I had to set a false zero in my mind for the business. So like if I was at 100,000 or close to 100,000, I treated that as zero. So that gave me a little bit of cushion for those, any time where we kind of do milestone payment schedules, and if you kind of set a milestone and there's some weird reason you can't hit it, it's a little bit awkward to try and ask for that payment. So for those days, that's why we try and build in a little cushion.
Gotcha. So you talked about, kind of you've joined some coaching groups. I know you're kind of part of a handful of them. Can you tell us, what those groups are, and, maybe how have they impacted, you personally as a leader, as well as impacted your business, and, kind of what do you see, really the biggest differences? Because, I see a lot of contractors who, oftentimes they don't realize that, hey, there's a lot that you don't know, and joining these networks and these groups could really help you. But then, once they kind of sort of understand, okay, well, it could help me, they struggle to say, well, which one do I join, and what are the differences? And so how do you, being part of multiple of them, I think you've got a really good perspective on, what it's like and the benefits, and how do you kind of see the differences?
Yeah, so I would say for me, because I want to say it's been maybe like 6 or 7 different groups I've been a part of. And early on, I think I just didn't have enough invested to do the work. So in 2021, when we first met, that was at Mile High Profit Summit with the Contractor Fight. And at that event, I kind of jumped in with a larger investment in a higher level of their program right off the get-go. And with that much money invested, I was focused to put in the work. So that I really put in the effort with what they had to offer with their sales process. And that did get me very comfortable talking to clients, saving me time from going out to everyone who called, just screening them and qualifying them over the phone a little bit before going and spending a couple hours having a nice conversation with someone. Yeah. Because I would do that and find out they didn't have the money. So
that was that one was very focused on, I guess kind of sales.
Yeah, that's what I got mostly out of that. It was just really saving my time with those calls and using conversation to get them to open up and explain what's driving the reason for the project. And then after you get all that, sharing a rough estimate with them, and if they are comfortable with that, then you move forward. But before, I would just waste a lot of time driving out, maybe even preparing a full written proposal, and then having them tell me, "Oh, thanks, we're gonna go with, our other guy."
So you used to. I mean, do you still do free estimates, proposals, or do you not charge for them?
Okay. Yeah. So I sell, because we're design build. I primarily will sell all of my clients in a design agreement.
Okay.
Whether it's a pre-construction agreement or just a strictly design, because we can't really give them an accurate number until we know really what we're building and all the details that go into it.
Yeah. So do you see that is a, if you were earlier on though, I mean, I see a lot of kind of younger contractors that really sort of, they're just trying to get their feet under them. They don't have as much, kind of, just experience and historical kind of, jobs and customers that they've worked with. So, a lot of times they're just willing to do whatever they can to win, those early jobs. I mean, do you think that that's something that, as you got more comfortable and as you had, more, kind of customers under your belt, that you became more, willing to kind of do the upfront design agreement? Or was that just kind of the design build model obviously is a little bit different than just selling any job that comes along, but how did you overcome that challenge early?
I think my big issue was there was a couple jobs where they were large jobs and we spent about 40 hours working up an actual proposal and just then having them say thanks and take someone else's who they were probably using the whole time. They were just kind of making sure the number looked right or something like that. And after probably the second one, I was like, this is not how I want to do it. So we stopped doing that. And I basically started explaining to them, and through the training, I was able to learn, this is best for you too, because there won't be surprises. We're going to get everything done up front, do the work. And you're going to spend a little bit of money, but you're going to get an accurate proposal. So that's very valuable because no one wants surprises. Yeah. So that worked out for the customers, but it also protects our time, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then you asked about other groups. So I'm also in Remodel Commanders, which I gravitated towards that because it's very detailed on step-by-step scaling, because my company is growing, but it's growing through brute force, basically just me working more. And that, I think I'm probably at the limit of what someone can do with brute force. So I need to really get those detailed systems, and that's what I'm partnering with Remodel Commanders to really focus on, putting the pieces in place so I can slowly step back from the day-to-day of just running all the crews and running all the jobs, and just focus on running the business.
So they've been very focused on kind of the more, I guess, systematizing your business. I mean, how did you come to kind of, how did you find them? And I know Lane, Bolin, he's awesome guy. How did that kind of come about? When did you know that you needed to go look for a better way? Because, again, I see so many people that think you can just keep working harder and harder, but that's also how you burn yourself out. And it's very hard to scale. Like you said, just more hours doesn't always equate to, successfully scaling. So how did you sort of know that, like, hey, I'm reaching this breaking point and need to do something different?
Well, I've known I've been at close to the breaking point for a long time, but because I'm usually running anywhere between 10 and 20 jobs by myself. So that's always, I would say, too many.
Yeah.
But I think I found Lane he just popped up in my feed one day, probably some videos. And I was like, man, this guy doesn't have any contractors experience. He's running a business, doing construction. He's not even on location most of the time. So that kind of intrigued me. So then I looked into it, and I saw some people that were working with him that I knew. So I kind of reached out to them, and they also kind of gave me the same input that he's very sharp and has his systems. And that made me reach out to him. And when I talked to him, it was definitely a good fit. I also like that he's kind of hands-on. He's almost like part of the team. So if I have a need, he's putting out the ads for me. He's doing screening for me. He's doing a lot of work. Like, he's part of my company, which I like. So he's invested in the company as well.
Yeah. No, we've known him for a while, and he's always been very very impressive. I like his approach of, like, the done for you,
Yeah.
And so him and his team, are very hands-on, which, it sounds like is, is really, it's a tremendous asset to be able to bring them into kind of your business and let them kind of really help start running with, certain aspects of it. Because again, as an entrepreneur, like, we want to put on every hat, but it's very hard to do all those, those necessary functions very, well at an excellent level. And so, I do always encourage people, like, figure out, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? What drives you? And then, like, what are all the other things, though, that you may be neglecting and dropping balls and not doing well? And then find partners who can come in and help you pick those balls up and keep the excellence going with every area of the business. And, from what I know, it sounds like he's done a really great job, like, getting very involved with his clients. Is that, like, were there, like, particular areas that you knew that you immediately needed help with? Like, sounds like the advertising, marketing aspects. Is that kind of the first place you started?
So that's going to be the last place, because I already have a pretty steady flow of leads.
Okay.
Our Google ranking is really high. We're in a pretty small area. I think Pacifica has like 45,000 people. Okay. And we rarely even go outside of the, like, 5 square miles, however big town is. So we rank pretty good here. And plus, with all the jobs, we have yard signs and word of mouth, next door, those types of things really kind of drive us a steady flow of leads. But we will start doing some, I'm not the most comfortable on video, but we'll start doing some video content and things like that to help just increase our domination in the market. But for the first thing we really worked on was putting together an outsourced design team. So Lane screened for me, got some designers, some estimators, and those were all outsource, and I would have my daily meetings with those guys. So
Yep.
Lane, that was the first thing Lane helped build, was the design team and the estimating team. That just taking the quantities for the plans off of my to-do list.
Nice.
Just reduce the amount of time I'm spending on these things. So I was more of like the estimating supervisor rather than the one who's just counting all the parts.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the design. Like, I used to do all the drawing. Now I assign the drawings and I kind of just supervise. In a pinch I'll draw, but for the most part I'm not drawing anymore either.
Yeah. So you feel confident though, like, taking that, kind of outsourcing it to this
I still have to
team?
be involved and supervise it, because ultimately it's still my name on the line, but it definitely helped. I was able to clear a backlog of, I think I had like 20 projects in design as well, and I just was drowning. So I needed it, and that's where we kind of had him start. I think now he's screening for project managers, so we're having a little bit, finding qualified clients or applicants has been a little challenging. There's a lot of applicants, but they're not really the rock stars that we're looking for.
Yeah. So
he's been on that for a few weeks.
Yeah, that's huge to have somebody that's helping kind of, recruit and screen those applicants. I mean, I know here at Job Trade, I mean, my COO is like somehow gone to almost full-time recruiter, and it's like you get so many people coming in, but like, again, you got to really spend that time up front, make sure that they're qualified, that they're going to be a good fit for the team, that like, it's so important that you do that. Otherwise you could end up banging on somebody to spend several months, investing in training them, trying to get them up to speed to learn that, man, this person isn't really the right fit or doesn't have the right skills. It sounds like you even kind of learned that firsthand, building up that team initially too.
Yeah, I've learned the hard way. And even just the interviewing, it sucks a lot of time out of your day, and having someone handle that for me was really valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that, a lot of times it's so valuable to have that kind of that third party perspective, that somebody kind of looking in on the business who's not like, emotionally invested and has been doing this every single day in, day out, like, eat, sleep, and breathe it. Like, to be able to have somebody kind of come in and kind of take a look, at a higher level, can really give you a great perspective on, hey, what are the things that like you see that I'm just, doing to myself, all right? Like, you're just bogging yourself down trying to take on every single thing. And, it sounds like the design, the estimating was something that was just really taking up a lot of your time. But, when you kind of break down, like, what is that actually worth per hour? It probably wasn't worth, you spending that time doing it, when you can bring someone who is a much more affordable, going to be able to turn that stuff around even quicker. It makes much more business sense, and it's probably now freed you up to go focus on other aspects of the business.
Yeah, it definitely, it was bogging me down, because I would just have a whiteboard looming of all the estimates I needed to get out, and it was like, that's just too many, and I would just kind of lock up and not get any of them out, and then I would have to rush as, I've had a deadline all of a sudden, and I'd have to rush through it, and then I end up having things that get missed. So it was definitely, that was a big thing to get some time back.
Yeah. So you told me earlier that you thought kind of one of your biggest challenges was production, and that you're still managing, playing project manager for, 10, 20 jobs at once. So Lane and Remodel Commanders, are they going to go, they're going to help you sort of try to build out more of a production management operations solution there? And how do you see that looking?
Yeah, that's our next hire will be a project manager and even a supporting staff, which we like a logistics manager is the term that we're using. So that project manager will be the top, and then he'll have someone right under him. So it'll be a 2-person kind of team, and we'll help him cover more projects and hopefully take them completely out of my to-do list.
And is that person going to be located, I assume, kind of right there with you?
Yeah, that'll have to be a local hire, because that's on the jobs.
Yeah.
Dealing with the employees.
What do you think is, what characteristics, what traits, skills, like how do you, when you think about what does that person look like, how will they fit in with your business? Like, do you have things that that, they must have?
Yeah. So a good attitude that's not going to like kind of throw a wrench in how I like to communicate. So I've had some hires in the past that are really stuck on their ways, even if their ways were wrong, because their company no longer exists. But they're like, the way I used to do it, I do it this way. I'm like, yeah, but let's focus on how we need to do it. So a good attitude. They have to have a reasonable amount of experience in the trades, because otherwise the crew won't respect them if they're just strictly book learned. So they have to have some hands-on experience, I think, but also good communicators and details. I can run a lot of stuff out of my head, but I can't have my employees doing it that way, or else we end up with some problems. So I need someone who's good with software, get in there, make all the to-do lists, punch list items, photos, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like you've also, you said your wife and your daughter were kind of taking a little bit more active role. How's that work?
It's working out pretty good. There's still some learning curves, because when my previous admin left, it would have left a pretty big void. And at the time, my daughter just graduated high school, and my wife was just like, well, maybe I could do it. So she's handling kind of the payroll and the data entry. My daughter's handling some of the job tread stuff and some of the inputting as well. So it's kind of nice. Keeps everyone helping out.
Yeah. No, it's I think it's always awesome when you can make it work. At the same time, and believe me, me and my dad, we work here every day together, so I totally get it. But I've seen a lot of businesses where it's hard for people to separate the business from the family. And I'm curious, do you guys do you find yourself kind of taking it to the dinner table? Is it something that kind of bleeds over? You guys, like, if you're like me, you just can't stop thinking about the business. I mean, how do you kind of manage that work-life balance?
Yeah, I don't bring up the books on them during off time usually. I think they both get their stuff done in a part-time basis, so
yeah,
they're still doing their own thing, but contributing a few hours a day here and there to just help keep things off of my to-do list.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's awesome though that you get to work with them, and that they've got the the desire to work with you and kind of build their own experience and careers alongside you. And at the end of the day, the family is very important, and if you guys can all win together, then more power to you.
Yeah, and my daughter just started community college, so it'll be there's an opportunity if she wants to see if this business is something she wants to pursue at a more full-time basis in the future. So it's giving her a little look into it.
Sure, that makes sense. So I'm curious, like, when you think about where you want to go with the business, like what's the longer term plan? What's the goal? Where do you want to see your company in the next 5-10 years?
So I'm in my perfect world, I'll be less involved in the day-to-day, but the business will keep growing. So we're able to make pretty good growth. This year should be our highest revenue year, just cracking over 5 million, I believe.
Nice,
and last
congrats.
year we were on the Inc. 5000 list, which was, not that best ranking, but we're on the list. So I think this coming next year we should be making improvements and just slowly like to just keep growing, sharpen up that bottom line, the net income, get that as high as we can, and also try and get some free time back.
Yep.
So I can focus on other things rather than just running to Home Depot when the guys forget something, or I don't know. The other day I had to clean a driveway because the guys left it muddy and the homeowner or someone was going to get hurt. So I had to, little things like that. I don't want to really have to do much longer, but the goal is to keep the company growing. And then, like I said, if my daughter wants to be a part of it, that would be really cool. And I would like that. That would be my ideal situation. And if she decides she doesn't, then I'll have to look at other options, whether it's, at some point prepare the company to sell, which I know it'll be a lot more valuable if I'm not the key dependent to keep it running.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It's a great thing to really think about. I mean, obviously, with your dad starting it and it's been in the family for so long, I can see how, in an ideal world, your daughter takes over and can keep growing and keep building it. But, at the end of the day, we can't always force our children to do what we hope, they might do and become entrepreneurs. I've got a 7 and a 6-year-old. My 7-year-old, my daughter is is definitely very interested in everything kind of other than business. I think my son's starting to get interested in business and entrepreneurship, but obviously at this young age, and I imagine even at your daughter's age, it's hard for them to really know what they want to do later. But it's always like, man, I just in my back of my mind, I hope one of them wants to be an entrepreneur and go follow in my footsteps. But it's hard to know.
Yeah. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm not forcing anything. So just we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes, if there's interest there or not. But
So
I still got a little bit of tread left to keep running it myself if I have to.
yeah, for sure. So I'm curious. When you think back, about the last many years, is there anything that like you wish you would have known, right when you took over the business that you now know that you think might help others, who are earlier on, they're just kind of getting their feet wet, just starting off, their business, or trying to get, quit wearing the bags, want to get into the business side. Like, what would you say kind of some of the biggest lessons, the biggest things that would have helped you to know earlier on, that you would give kind of advice for others?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistakes that have cost me the most money have been rushing into jobs without all the proper details known, and just assuming that we're on the same page. And because I'm in a small town, I'm going to do what's right, and that sometimes has cost me some pretty big amounts of money. So getting your paperwork organized before you even show up to start is probably my biggest advice to someone who's new. And then other than that, figure out your numbers. Like, what is it going to cost you to do the job, and make sure you're making a decent profit, because the amount of stress we go under as owners of businesses it's not worth it if you're not making a good living, because it's pressure and stress, and you got family, and you're going to get pulled. And if you can make more working at a fast food place than you're making owning a company, I would say don't do it.
I don't know if I go that far with it, but I'm curious, how do you handle stress? I mean, obviously it sounds like and I would venture to say, as any entrepreneur, it's self-imposed a lot of the time. We're trying to take on more and more, and just put that pressure on ourselves. But how do you de-stress? How do you take a break? I mean, how do you recharge?
So I'm acclimated to a pretty high level of stress, so that just comes from years of doing it. So I can tolerate quite a bit. I like to golf. I like to snowboard when it's snowboard season. My daughter does too. So we'll go snowboarding in the winter.
Nice.
So that's always fun. And then when a project goes well, it takes stress off. So most of my stress is like feeling like I'm gonna let the client down or something like that. So it's some of it's just in my head, right? Imagining what they're gonna say.
Yeah.
So that unknown, sometimes it gets worse than it actually really is. So
yeah,
that's kind of the big thing. Like, just work stress, that's not too bad, but it's more like the expectations and missing the high level that I'd like to be at. Those things kind of bog me down.
When you do hit, or when you do wrap up a job and it's gone well, like, I mean, do you do things to celebrate with your team? How do you kind of like make sure that everyone, can sort of take a moment to sort of, sit back and reflect on what went well?
Sometimes. Lately, there hasn't been a lot of time, because it's just like we aren't even done with that job and 2 more are starting. So there's really never that moment to breathe.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll try and do some things here and there for the guys. Like, in the past, we've hosted like parties in the evening where they bring their family. A little bit less of that lately, being just so overloaded. But
yeah,
that would definitely be something I would like to have time for, to celebrate those wins a little bit more.
And how do you define success? Like, whether it's success on a job, or like for each one of your guys, like what does success look like to them? How does kind of this notion of we did well. How do you sort of recognize that?
Yeah, well, so for me, it's the bottom line. For the guys, I'm hoping they can see like the fact that I'm doing things that are trying to make their lives better. So we've added full medical benefits to the team. They're getting sick time. They're getting they work 4/10s, so they get those long weekends every week. So just trying to do things like that to help support them, and always just encouraging them that if they put in the work and get better, there's lots of room to grow.
Nice.
I mean, I want all of them to take my job, so there's no limit on where they go. It's just the effort they put in, and the right guys will step up and be able to take that kind of position.
Do you have do you set an annual goal for yourself, monthly goals? Like, are there any sort of like kind of the team has goals that you work towards?
So the team doesn't have goals that I work towards as of now. I did set annual goal of 5 million for the year in sales, and we're actually going to exceed it slightly in revenue, which is nice.
Nice.
So yeah, I did set out some goals for the year, and I'm going to have to set some bigger ones for next year.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, when you set a goal for yourself, you not only can now you actually achieve it because you've defined it, but like, it's so interesting that like, you're so much more likely to hit that goal, when it's just something that you focus on, and so many people don't define how do we want to perform? What does success look like? And then, they don't know if they succeeded. They don't know. Like, I mean, how did things go? I don't know. I just keep doing what I'm doing. It's like getting caught in that rat race versus like kind of taking that bigger step back to do some planning and setting those goals. I mean, that's how you keep improving, is by benchmarking yourself and looking at, how have we done? Did we hit a goal? If not, what assumption did we make that we missed? And taking the time to kind of drill in, and then, okay, well, next year, we're going to take that into account. We're going to refine that goal, and hopefully we can hit it now that, we've learned, so I think it's such an important exercise to go through.
Yeah, I agree. And the sales, I hit the sales target, and I was like, man, the revenue is lagging behind, but I think we should collect like 1.5 just this last quarter. So that'll put us, right above that mark. So we'll be working.
You think you'll, hard. I mean, what about setting, a gross profit goal or a net income goal?
Yeah. So I want that 10% on the bottom, and I think we need to hit right close to 40. We probably have a little bit of wiggle room there to make that happen. But yeah, so definitely, and then I'm going to start trying to bring that net goal up. But that's where like I'm going to rely on Lane to really help sharpen my focus on making sure that bottom line number looks good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, look, Rich, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, kind of the challenges that you've had. Obviously it appears you've done a great job. Exceeding 5 million, is a huge feat. So many people, that's just kind of a far out there dream for them. I mean, getting that first million is definitely the hardest. Growing from 1 to 2 to to 5. I mean, every single kind of stage has got its own set of unique challenges, and that's where again you've done a good job, not just continuing to do the same things over and over and thinking that we'll just keep growing. The brute force is not is not the answer. I'm a big proponent of you can't just throw bodies at problems and think that's gonna solve it. It's really important to take the time to kind of figure out how can we become more efficient. What systems and processes can we do? Where can we build teams? Where can we leverage partners or outsource? Those are all great strategies that you're clearly implementing, and it's working. You're doing a great job, and it's been really fun to watch you and your success and how you continue to build out this team. I think having Lane, in your corner is obviously a huge asset. Kudos to you for finding him. And then again taking that that time to learn about him and making that investment in your business, because obviously up front it can be scary, but man, as you start to see the results come in, obviously it makes a lot of sense. And at the end of the day, hopefully you can kind of get a lot more of that those day-to-day responsibilities off your plate. I want to see you, taking that snowboard there in the background and enjoying more free time with your family. And it's awesome though that you've done a good job in not letting the business burn you out. So many times just people either from a financial standpoint they throw in the towel, or from that stress level, it's kind of something that they can't handle. But you've done a great job. You've surrounded yourself with really, really smart, hardworking people. The coaching groups that you're part of today, the team that you've built. Just keep going, man. I want to see you get to 10 million. I want to see you being spending more time out on the beach or on the mountain. Maybe I'll get an invite to go do some snowboarding with you or surfing. I mean, I'd love to see you succeed though, man. You're really doing a great job leading.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, like I said, we joined with Job Tread, and the team's getting better at it, and we're just going to start being able to utilize it a lot more. And I'll be out at Job Tread Connect, so we'll see you then.
Awesome, Rich. Well, thanks again for coming on.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
See you. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.